Oh, come on.
Okay, you're all set.
Awesome. Sounds good. All right, so we'll get started. Today's workshop is on coping with the holidays. Of course, the holidays can be a happy time for people, but of course, it can also be just
Hey,
a
Chris, sorry about that.
stressful time for people as well, for many different reasons that we will go over in this presentation. And also we can discuss how we can cope with the holidays and any stressors that come up. So before we begin, just a quick introduction of the Mental Health and Wellness Center at Molloy College. We offer therapy for children, adolescents, and adults, group therapy, family therapy, couples therapy, and workshops such as these. And if you'd like to seek individual therapy or know someone who could use these services, we are very affordable. And our contact information is right here. So just a quick table of contents for what we're going to be going over today. So first, a quick introduction, beginning the discussion with the check-in, like how we're doing, why we're here. Then we're going to define the holiday blues, or just define why this time of year can lead to stress and identifying some of those stressors. Then we're going to talk about positive and supportive actions we can take that will help us cope with the stress of the holidays. And we're also going to do a guided meditation as well to ground ourselves and relieve ourselves of any anxiety that we're having, or at least reduce it somewhat. Then we're going to wrap up the discussion with the checkout and discuss what we can take from this going forward, and and see how we're all doing. So with that said, let's begin with the check-in. So if any of you feel free to either unmute yourselves and speak, or if you're more comfortable, you can just type in the chat any of these questions. But so on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the worst and 10 being the best, how you're feeling today is something you can talk about, or you can also discuss how you feel during the holiday season and why you decided to join us today.
I'm feeling wait, 10 was the best, right? So I'm feeling like an 8. Are we going to be comparing our mood to weather again? Because I got some.
We can, yeah. If you want to go, feel free to go for the weather analogy again. Yeah.
I feel like I'm snow, only because I don't know if I'm like a calm snowstorm or if I'm going to be like a full out blizzard by Christmas, but one of them.
Right. So the snow is just starting to fall, but you're not sure if it's going to turn into a blizzard or just remain a calm, peaceful snowfall.
Yeah, exactly. And I really like those weather analogies, actually.
Yeah, sometimes, like the weather can be a good way to conceptualize our mental health. And even just something else I just like about weather and mental health is the idea of weathering a storm. In that not only can we get through a storm and come out of it on the other side, relieved that it's over, but sometimes after a storm, there's a rainbow. So there's a reward for persevering, for getting through something. I see Chris just wrote in the chat, feeling like a 7 today. The holidays are tough, but they help remind him of what he's grateful for. Yeah, it's a good answer. And yeah, a lot of times when we are feeling stressed, it can serve as a reminder to think about what we're grateful for. And sometimes when we're not stressed, we don't think to take the time to do that. So sometimes, yeah, like one of the benefits of any distress is it can serve as a reminder. Okay, check in on ourselves. What can I do to help myself feel better? In a lot of cases, that can be reminding yourself of what you're grateful for.
Yeah, definitely.
I guess for oh yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to answer from my perspective. I'm at about a 6.5, I would say, on a scale of 1 to 10. For me, the weather, it's like there's a few chilly rain showers, but I do think we're going to see some sunshine in a couple of days. So I'm optimistic about how I'm going to cope with the holidays. But for right now, there is a little bit of a rain shower. How about you, Mary? What were you going to say?
I'm feeling kind of similarly, like the feeling, maybe like a 7. It feels like I'm so excited for the holidays, but there's a lot of stress that comes with it as well, with like last minute Christmas shopping and money and work and everything like that. So a lot of things come up at this time of year for many of us. So it is that strange mix between happy and excited and stressed for me.
Right. Yeah, and the thing with feelings is that it's not binary. It's not one or the other. It can be all of those things. The holidays can both be a good time and a stressful time. You know, it can be something looking forward to and also something that brings about stress. Like, it doesn't have to just be one thing or the other. Well, but with that said, of course, while it seems like a lot of us are doing fairly well, there are some things that are stressing us out a bit about the holidays. And in terms of, like, I guess the holiday blues, or just defining this time of year and how it makes us feel. The holiday blues are temporary feelings of anxiety and depression during the holidays. And of course, they often arise between Thanksgiving and New Year's. So yeah, sometimes the holidays do specifically lead to temporary feelings of anxiety and depression. And in fact, a NAMI study shows that 64% of people who already have mental illness report that the holidays make their conditions worse. So the holiday blues themselves aren't a mental illness. It would be mental illness if, let's say, these feelings of anxiety and depression persist well beyond the holidays, but they can again give us temporary feelings of anxiety, depression, or if you already have a mental illness, they can often exacerbate that mental illness. And what does this feel like? Oftentimes it leads to anxiety, depression, feelings of loneliness, stress. Of course, if there's a lot of last minute Christmas shopping, increased irritability, either increased or decreased sleep, essentially disturbed sleep habits. If you're used to generally a good sleep routine, sometimes that can get disrupted this time of year with all the stress. And with that can also come increased exhaustion and fatigue, but it can also result in difficulty concentrating on your work, especially if you're feeling distracted by all the stressors that you have or distracted by your anxious thoughts. But it can also lead to you withdrawing from loved ones, especially if you have mixed relationships with the loved ones who you're going to be spending time with during the holidays. It can lead to sometimes a loss of pleasure in normal activities that you usually enjoy, and it can also lead to increased indecision. But as mentioned before, while there certainly are mental health elements to holiday blues, it's not necessarily a diagnosable mental health condition on its own, because when it's just the holiday blues, the symptoms tend to become milder and subside when the holidays are over. As far as some of the causes, if you're here for the workshop about the coping with the cold and the darkness, there is going to be some overlap. It's a similar time of year where it gets colder, but there's also some specific holiday causes as well. So less daylight this time of year throws off our biological clocks and reduces serotonin and melatonin levels in the brain, and thus the sleep can just be altered. We associate darkness with sleep. So oftentimes, if you're coming home from a full day of work at 5 p.m., it's already dark out, you're already into you're already into winding down mode, almost sometimes too much. Whereas during the summer, you come at 5 p.m., it's still light out, you might still have the energy to do some other coping skills that often relieve stress. But a specific holiday cause could be financial difficulties and the pressure to purchase gifts for loved ones, especially if you have a big family and there's a lot of gifts you want to purchase for loved ones, or you want to make a good impression on your loved ones with a certain gift, but you're having financial difficulties. That can certainly play a toll and lead to stress. And that oftentimes that balance between wanting to purchase gifts but also tending to your financial difficulties is really challenging. I think also unrealistic expectations is a big part of the holiday blues, because it's often stereotyped that holidays are, oh, it's such the perfect time of year, we're joyous, oh, everyone's coming together, oh, everything is great, especially if people are constantly posting on social media like these really fun, cheerful holiday pictures. It adds to the idea that the holidays are quote unquote supposed to be perfect, but in reality, they're not. There's a reason why a lot of people feel stressed about this time of year. It's not a perfect time of year. So sometimes unrealistic expectations can lead to more stress. And just in general, another cause is lack of social support and isolation from others. And again, this I think is something that's often compounded by COVID and just being indoors more in general.
Yeah. Also, to touch on that last part with COVID, also not knowing what your holidays are going to look like because of especially right now with the spike in COVID cases, that causes stress for people. Are they going to be with their loved ones? Will they have COVID on during the holidays? And just trying to like cope with and deal with that unknown of how you're supposed to spend the perfect day, and having those expectations and not having a lot of control over it can also cause a lot of stress and anxiety. I've found.
Right. That's a really good point, especially when conceptualizing anxiety, it's often is about worrying about the future unknown. So the uncertainties with regard to COVID and how that affects your holidays is can only make that anxiety worse a lot of the time. It adds to the things that make anxiety stressful. So it's definitely a really good point. And just a few more causes, holiday specific. Stress, of course, some people are on really good terms with all of their family, but not everyone is on good terms with the entire family they're going to spend time with. So stress from family gatherings in that regard, but also just stress, let's say you're hosting the holidays, stress in putting everything together, trying to be the quote unquote perfect host is also a stress, even if you are on good terms with everyone in your family. But to the other point, let's say there are COVID complications, or there are some family who lives really far away. If you associate the holidays as a time when you do see family, but you're not able to see some family, it can just lead to some, of course, increased sadness from not being able to see that family. Also, the fact that the holidays, there's New Year's as one of the holidays that come up this time of year, which often makes us reflect in the past year. And a lot of times reflecting can be good. It's often important to, reflect and see what we can and how we've grown. But if we're reflecting, but we're already in an inherently anxious and depressed state, it's more likely that the reflection we're doing might focus on regrets and disappointments rather than our successes and our growth. So that can also lead to increased holiday stress. And also nostalgia for the past. Maybe when you were little, you had more just like you were a little kid, you just associated Christmas as the day I got all these presents, and it was so happy. I didn't know anything about any family drama or family distress, and this nostalgia for like, oh, I wish times were simpler. I think sometimes that can be a stressor as well. But of course, also grief as well, especially if you have a recently lost loved one who you normally see this time of year and you're not going to see them. It could just lead to increased feelings of sadness from grief coming up again and getting compounded as well.
Yeah, a lot of things that can cause that feeling. And we kind of think of it a lot of the times as stress before the holidays, but some people just feel sad. It helps them to focus on their loss a lot more, like to having that first Christmas without that loved one, or if you had just lost a loved one right by Christmas time, again with those expectations that it's supposed to be the greatest time of year, and then having New Year's come around really soon and reflecting like you were just saying. But also I feel with the nostalgia for past holidays, a lot of times when you're little, if like for the lucky people, they felt magic on Christmas, that magic, or you're like, you're pretending that you can hear Santa coming on the roof or something like that, or just having that stress free of not having to get other people presents when you're like 5, and
Right.
being able to just have that magical time and almost like chasing that feeling throughout throughout your adulthood, and like saying, oh, why isn't it the way it used to be, like that song Where Are You Christmas. That kind of feeling can come up for people. There's been I feel like an increase in some sad Christmas songs in the past, like in our lifetime. So it definitely comes up in different ways for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's a good point. There definitely are, I think, more of those sad Christmas songs that are written now. I think probably because of the fact that it's more known, the concept of the holiday blues, than it used to be. I think, especially when we were younger, there was only that like magical association with the holidays. But it's kind of a reality that it's not just only a magical time of year. And speaking to the point of being little and not and knowing you can receive presents and not feel guilt about not buying anything, but now as we're older, it's like there's sometimes, a guilt that we feel if we don't have the money to buy a certain quality of gift
Yeah.
for someone. So there can be nostalgia in terms of just not having those guilty feelings as well.
Right.
And so, but with that said, there are some positive and supportive actions we can take to help alleviate some of this stress. It's one of the first things I will mention is the idea of creating a routine and engaging in rituals that keep you active and organized. Of course, one of the symptoms of the holiday blues is often a disrupted sleep schedule or maybe a disruptive eating schedule, but just being mindful of trying to at least create some sort of routine you can stick to on a day-to-day basis is something that can help you, and something that helps kind of almost like right the ship in a way that prevents you from spiraling too deep into some of those anxious and depressed symptoms. But I think what's also important is to redefine what the holidays mean to you. You can have your own specifics regards to, what the holidays mean to you. You can get festive in your own way. You don't have to be festive in the stereotypical ways if that's not what you're feeling. But being able to kind of it can be empowering though to redefine what the holidays mean to you specifically, rather than what society says the holidays should mean to you. But I think another way we can redefine what the holidays mean to us is, again, adjusting some of those expectations. A lot of times we think the holidays mean perfect, ideal time of year, but that's often not the case. So we can just even simply just being realistic and not expecting the ideal holiday, but still being able to enjoy the positives that do come with it, I think is also a way we can cope with the time of year, and more so help to appreciate the positives without dwelling on what's not perfect. But of course, we can also connect digitally or spend time or in person, if it's safe, and spend time with loved ones who bring you joy, safety, and comfort. Maybe there can sometimes be guilt in not seeing the entire family this time of year, but if there are certain people who don't bring you that joy, safety, and comfort, then maybe you don't have to spend time with all those people extensively. You can more so focus on the loved ones who do bring you that joy, safety, and comfort. And of course, engaging in hobbies and activities that make you happy is also other ways we can cope. And there's a few more, mindfulness and grounding techniques. And we're actually going to be doing a mindfulness exercise a little bit later on. But of course, some of these techniques can simply even just be deep breathing. There's also the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique that involves like identifying like 5 things around you that you see, 4 things that you hear, 3 things that, the 4 things that you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and then 1 thing you can taste, just to activate those senses and really challenging yourself to come up with those things, just as a means of grounding yourself and knowing that regardless of all the stressors you have, that you can still ground yourself and be just aware of what's around you physically that isn't those stressors. It can be a nice little distraction. But of course, exercising and being active this time of year can often be important. I know it's easier said than done if you're feeling like your sleep schedule's off, but just being mindful of the fact that it can still be beneficial, I think, is important. But also, you're reaching out when you're struggling. If you have people in your support system who you can talk to, don't be afraid to reach out to them. I'm sure people often will treat you with compassion. But also listening to your mind and body. Like if your mind and body are kind of telling you to not push yourself too much, it's okay. Listening to it, recognizing your limits, and allowing yourself to say no to something. But even from a little bit more of a just true practical sense, sticking to a budget, I think, is also important. Sticking to a rigid budget that you're not going to break. So you're still maybe purchasing some gifts that is rewarding from a giving sense, but not putting too much of a financial burden on yourself either.
Yeah, absolutely. I think these are great ways to kind of cope with what we just previously spoke about, like that anxiety around financial burden or about seeing family members that don't bring you that comfort, and recognizing that you can say no, and that if you are alone on the holidays, it's not a bad thing just because that's not what is commercialized or what's on people's social media. People, as we know, social media is a highlight reel, so who really knows what everybody's holidays are really like? So to try not to compare, I think, would be another one, which is obviously easier said than done. But if anybody's wants to kind of write in the chat or unmute and say, like, does anybody find any of these particularly helpful, or does any of these stick out to anybody? You could write in the chat or unmute.
Yeah, I think for me personally, that recognizing your limits and allowing yourself to say no is probably one of the bigger things. So sometimes I do feel guilty when I'm not when I'm not being, I don't know, like social to a certain degree with everyone in family. And sometimes I can be a little bit critical of myself in that regard. So knowing that it's okay to say no to certain things and not overly exhausting myself is one of the bigger ones for me.
Yeah, and I saw on the chat Kieran said that he missed the question. So we're just saying, do any of these positives or supportive actions kind of stick out to you? Or like anything that you find really helpful? And I see Chris wrote in the chat, I think exercising is a great outlet for this. The sense of accomplishment goes a long way for myself personally. Yeah, so getting those endorphins and kind of getting yourself moving rather than allowing yourself to fall into that pattern of kind of staying in bed and getting more isolated and things like that. And again, it's easier said than done, but definitely something great to have on your radar, to know that that helps you and to know that that keeps you moving.
Right, and it can be simple. It can even just be something as simple as a walk. It doesn't have to be a 5-mile run in the cold. It can just be a walk while there's still some sun out. It doesn't always. And even with exercise, like sometimes there's a stereotype of, oh, exercise has to look like this, but if you get a lot of satisfaction just out of a short walk in the morning, then that's what works for you.
Yeah, definitely. And even doing at-home workouts, that's one of the huge benefits of YouTube, is that you can YouTube those workouts, like a 5-minute workout, and you can feel really accomplished and get yourself moving and active and ready for the day.
Right. Yeah, building a little bit more on the idea of creating routines and rituals. This can look different for different people. Some people have, especially depending on people's work schedules, they're forced to have a certain timeline of a routine. But it can often be important maybe to just ask yourself, what routines and rituals have worked for me in the past, particularly maybe before some of the holiday blues set in, but also maybe asking yourself what is currently not working for me and knowing kind of how to adjust from there. But as you spoke to earlier, with this concept, it's important to again prioritize the consistent sleep, nutrition, hygiene, and self-care, but also, focusing on what you can control, especially given the pandemic variables. We can't control, the new variants and, a lot of people testing positive and how that impacts the holidays. But, we can control, how we view the time of year. We can control how we cope. So just in terms of eliminating some of the very overwhelming feelings this time of year, if you're able to kind of filter it into what you can versus what you can't control, at least that makes some of the managing of it a little bit more, again, manageable. But of course, don't forget breaks and fun and fun/downtime. That can be part of a routine and ritual. A break, you can schedule a break. A lot of times when it comes to consistency in scheduling things, it's often associated with like work or chores or getting things done, but you can schedule a break for yourself too, and like say, okay, this time of day every day I'm taking a break. At this time of day every day I'm doing fun and downtime for myself, guilt-free. But also being honest and gentle with yourself, not being too hard on yourself. Let's say you didn't get everything done on the holiday to-do list today. And again, also, as you said before, it can be simple. It doesn't have to be a complicated thing. Sometimes just one simple activity is something that works for you, then that's what works for you.
Yeah, I love that one of being gentle with yourself, and especially in times where you can't control a lot of things. Just to be honest with yourself and say what you're feeling and what you're going through, but not to be too hard on yourself that you're going through it. It's a stressful time. It's like we said, like marketed as this happy time, but it's not for everybody. And not every day is going to be perfect in any season or week. So just to be really gentle with yourself and to not beat yourself up too much for feeling stressed in a time where you're supposed to be happy. But also I like the idea of focusing on what you can control and just kind of reframing it. There's a lot, like you said, that we can't control, and especially in these past 2 years that have really come up. And just to say, I think if anybody was in any of our previous workshops, we really worked on like our mantras. I think it was the giving thanks one that we did, and just repeating to yourself what you can control and what you are grateful for in times where you need it, just to kind of remind yourself to keep going and to help yourself.
Right. And even speaking on the topic of that workshop, like expressing gratitude is also something you can control. Being mindful of what you're grateful for is something you can control. Even if it's difficult, we have it within ourselves to find something that we are grateful for, even given the current stressors that we may be having.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Another, well, I guess, category of coping can also be things to avoid as well, because which it can be important to avoid isolating yourself and withdrawing from others too much. Of course, having a night and taking time for yourself, especially if you're introverted, is one thing. But when you're consistently isolating yourself and withdrawing from others too much, that can often further exacerbate any depressive symptoms you're having. And of course, that goes along with spending too much time alone inside and in bed. And also neglecting personal hygiene and nutrition. Again, so a lot of these things that we want to avoid are things that exacerbate the anxiety and depression that we may already be having this time of year. But I think it's also particularly important to avoid too much screen time and too much news consumption. Of course, it's important to be informed, but we don't want to just overly consume ourselves with often and negatively slanted news. So often it's we can take a break from consuming all that news so regularly. Prioritizing your mental health first can often be more important than just being 100% informed in every given news item. But even speaking of too much screen time, when it comes to this time of year, in comparison, a lot of screen time is associated with social media time. When you see, again, happy pictures of people, well, quote unquote, happy pictures of people with this ideal looking holiday. And that can often make us compare ourselves to that. Oh, look what they have and I don't. But a lot of times what's on social media is a fake, exaggerated portrayal of what someone's life really is. But also, again, just avoiding social media to avoid making those comparisons in the first place, and avoid putting yourself down in that way in the first place as well, I think is also important. Also, while having comfort food can be soothing, you don't want to overeat or binge just for the sake of comfort. And we also want to avoid using substances to numb negative emotions, or if you are going to use, just please be sure to keep that in moderation.
Yeah, just avoiding unhelpful ways of coping that would kind of lead to an exacerbation of the symptoms that you're already feeling. Like staying inside and in bed, it really might make you do that more and more, and it becomes that cycle. And what we talked about previously were ways of breaking that cycle, so that you don't keep falling deeper and deeper into those feelings and giving into them, because it happens when you get stuck. It's really hard to come out. But one of those things we talked about is being honest with yourself and reflecting and recognizing what might be making my depression or anxiety worse right now. And when you recognize what it might be, being gentle with yourself and allowing yourself to break that cycle. It's not so easy to break that cycle when you're getting down on yourself and being really hard on yourself. It might lead to more of these things that you want to avoid. So just being gentle with yourself in order to get out of that cycle would be really important.
Right, very well said. Especially considering it's so easy to be very hard on ourselves if we're already anxious and depressed. So being mindful of not being so hard on ourselves maybe can be one of the first steps to breaking yourself out of that cycle. So now that we've gone over the content of the presentation, we will now be doing a guided meditation led by Mary.
Yes. I'm going to turn off my camera for this. Doug, I would invite you to as well. I think it's just a better way to really get into a comfortable space. So I really want everybody to sit in a comfortable position. Get comfortable if you can, have your feet flat on the floor. And we'll start by settling our minds and body by taking just a few deep breaths. And if you feel comfortable, letting your eyes shut. So let's take a deep breath in and hold it and out. One more time in and hold it and out. And you can just continue that breathing, just taking deep breaths in, holding it and letting it out. So we're going to do mindfulness practice, which is an opportunity to build an ability to observe without our normal reactive spirals that we can get into. For a few moments, we'll take a break from our escalating holiday stresses. Let's take a deep breath in and hold and out. I want you to notice whatever is going on for you right now in your mind, but then come back to your breath. In and hold and out. Whether you feel stressed or even relaxed or anything else, just for a moment, just let it all be in your mind. Without judgment or expectation, just notice all of your feelings and come back to the next breath. In, hold, and out. Now let's picture the next few days, weeks even. Let's take a moment to notice what comes to mind when you picture the holiday season. How does your body feel right now while you think about that? Is it tight or restless? Or it could even be nauseated or exhausted. It can be relaxed, comfortable. I just want you to notice that feeling in your body and just let it be. And come back to your next breath. In. Hold. And on this breath, try to release that feeling and out. Now let's take a minute to label your emotions that you're feeling, that you noticed in your body and in your mind when thinking about this holiday season. What emotions are arising? Maybe it's a mix of enjoyment and joy and dread, tiredness or exhaustion. Where are your thoughts going? Maybe they're conflicting feelings of what might be, stress over what seems possible, what might happen this holiday season, stress over affording or getting last minute presents while having limited time to do so, or even excitement about the holidays. Take a deep breath in and hold and out. Now relax into your breath. Right now, there's nothing to do, and no one to be, and nowhere to go. In this moment, sitting here, this is all that there is, all that you need to think of. Some other time might be for acting or thinking. Right now, take care of anything that's prominently coming up, allow it to come in, and like a cloud flying away, just let it go. Let go of fixing and moving and focus on your next breath in and hold and out. Now, while focusing on that breath, I want you to shift your attention to someone that you care about. And take a few moments to focus on your friends and your families. I want you to picture them. Could be multiple people, could be one. When you have them pictured, I want you to wish them well wherever they are, whether they're able to be with you this holiday season or not. And wish them peace or health or safety or happiness, whatever you wish them. Take a deep breath in and hold and out. Now let's bring the focus to ourselves. This can be a time of stress, maybe, for some, or excitement, joy, dread. I want you to wish yourself whatever you just wished for your family. Wish yourself ease, peace, happiness, strength, safety, health, love. I want you to just take a moment to be grateful for whatever comes to your mind right now when thinking about yourself. Let's take a deep breath in and hold and out. Now let's practice as best as we're able to letting go. A picture of whatever you think may derail your holiday plans, anything that comes to mind that feels unhelpful or scary, or anything that causes dread or anxiety. Remember that they're all just thoughts. Let's label it, if you'd like, as a thought. Our thoughts are not always true. Sometimes they are just our fears out loud. Don't wrestle with it, and don't engage with it quite as much as you might have in the past. Just note that it's a thought, and then come back to breathing in, hold, and out. Now, as we allow ourselves to come back to our workshop and our Zoom meeting, when you're comfortable, you can open your eyes and just remember to allow the holidays to happen, to take care of whatever keeps you grounded, like sleep or exercise. Enjoy what's good, plan what needs planning, and let go of the rest. Focus instead on whatever you value and finding the most sustaining and happy this time of year. And when you're ready, you can take a deep breath in and hold and out. And if you're ready, you can come back to the workshop and open your eyes. Whenever you're ready. Now, if anybody it feels comfortable sharing, I just want to know how you feel after that guided meditation. If it brought up anything for you, what kind of feelings were coming through, if it was easy to let them go or difficult. Karen said that was so calming and peaceful. I'm glad. Sometimes around this time, so what we need, just a little break, and reminding ourselves to take a deep breath can be very rewarding. Your voice is so calming and very peaceful. Thank you, Chris. How are you feeling, Doug?
Pretty good. In my head definitely feels a little calmer. I think what stood out to me from the guided meditation was the concept of like wishing someone you care about or your family like well, and wishing them like peace, happiness, and whatnot, and then doing that for yourself after. Sometimes it's a reminder that we don't often like take the time to wish that for ourselves. Like there are people we care about who we want really good things for, but we very rarely take the time to do that for ourselves. We instead focus on being very critical of ourselves, especially this time of year. So I think it was definitely beneficial to take that time and, you know, wish those good things for ourselves. And even just, it also just reminds me of the concept that I think it can be important to treat yourself as you would your friends if they came to you with the problems that you were having.
Yeah, absolutely. I always like to have ourselves take a minute to be grateful for ourselves and what we are able to wish ourselves and what we have, because like you're saying, sometimes we can just be so hard on ourselves. People I've heard say, and I'm saying to my clients, like, would you ever talk to your best friend like that? What if someone talked to your best friend like that? Like, you have yourself, and to treat yourself with kindness and to wish yourself well, and to take that time in a time of year where we're putting people first, which is always great. But that idea of, you can't light yourself on fire to keep others warm. You can't fill up everyone else's cup with what's in your own, because you don't want to give until there's nothing left. So when you're wishing others well, just remembering it's okay to wish yourself well as well.
Right.
Putting that focus on ourselves in this time and not feeling selfish about it.
Right, exactly. Especially considering there's often guilt this time of year, but it's okay to prioritize ourselves or take time for ourselves. And,
Yeah,
definitely. Wish
definitely.
ourselves well. It's not selfish. With all that said, and of course, anyone else can still feel free to share their experiences, but this is the checkout portion of the workshop. And so, of course, feel free to ask any questions you have about the holidays or any stressors any of you currently are having. Also, feel free to share how you're feeling right now. It can either be via the weather analogy again, or it can be a scale of 1 to 10, or both. And also feel free to share what your experience was during the workshop. So any of you could answer one of these, multiple of these, whatever ones you want to answer, feel free to share.
Where we wait for the chat, so it's like giving a few minutes for people to be able to type. Speaking from personal, I feel a little bit, even though I was the one who was doing the guided meditation, it does kind of bring that calmness to me, thinking about what I have to do to go run around and finish with shopping for the holidays. Just being able to take those breaths really is really helpful. But I see that Kieran wrote in the chat, very calm after this, and I'll be able to handle the blizzard, but I'm hoping for a calm snowfall. Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, that's encouraging. So it sounds like you're prepared for what could escalate and you feel confident that you can handle it, but of course you can still hope that it doesn't get to that point. So certainly an encouraging answer. I also see that Chris wrote in the chat, I know we talked about it before, but what's the best mindset to have spending time with people in the family you don't necessarily see eye to eye with? Of course, I think there are multiple ways to answer this question. I think, I'll let Mary chime in after, but I think one thing that stands out to me is, I guess, just, not feeling guilty for not engaging with this person or people so consistently. It's okay to more so focus on who you're comfortable with in the family. You don't have to force interaction with certain people just to fit the stereotype of, oh, holidays bring everyone together. It's important to tend to yourself, is one thing that I would say. But
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Doug. I think that sometimes we think because we're going to be in the same room as someone, especially if we don't see eye to eye with them, that we have to engage, or that it's inevitable that an argument or a disagreement or discomfort might break out. But I think it kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier about focusing on the things you can control. And there's one thing to just say a hi and bye, and another thing to allow ourselves to get worked up with things that we know might not have any type of resolve in the end. Like certain conversations with certain people that we just don't see eye to eye with. Sometimes it's just what that is. It's just an argument that no one's going to change their mind. And but being okay with that, like you were saying, Doug, that you don't have to engage and that you can still be kind and have a good environment without engaging in conversations or with people who don't make you feel comfortable or supported, and just allowing yourself to enjoy the rest of it and kind of saying those things to yourselves like, well, you know what, this person is here and I'm here with my family, and it's okay if that one person is there, and just focusing on what is why you are there and what you are enjoying about that, kind of reframing how you're viewing the holiday.
all right, yeah, I think that's pretty well said, Mary. Yeah, if you're, of course, sometimes we can we work things through with family who we don't necessarily see eye to eye with. So it's not to say to just not do that ever.
Yeah.
But something when it comes to the point where you're alluding to, Mary, where you just don't see eye to eye, and talking about it isn't going to change your views on that situation. I think that's when it's best to, more so take the mindset that we're talking about and not feeling guilty for not engaging so consistently with that people. And again, yeah, focusing on what you are enjoying about the holidays, even if things are imperfect about this time of year or the holiday event, you can still, again, focus on what you are enjoying about it.
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely agree with what you're saying. Like, that's not always the approach for every disagreement with somebody in your life, but maybe you just like on like a holiday, it might not be the best time to try and resolve something that's been going on for a long time, but maybe it is. But it's really what you're comfortable with, and feeling, do I want to engage, is going to make my time better or worse? And just allow, like, putting that boundary with yourself in a room where you feel like you have to be.
Right. Yeah, definitely concur with the boundary sentiment.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions or want to share how they're feeling right now? Or any of these other questions up here? All right. Yeah, I guess I'm at like a 7.5 now. I was at 6.5 earlier. Yeah, just my mind in general, just a little bit more calmed now. I don't see as much rain in my current weather. I'm starting to see a little bit more. Even right now, I'm looking out the window and seeing all the sunshine. And I think that's symbolic of what's to come, I think, in the coming days. And I see that Chris says he's up to an 8 after the session. Awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
Very good stuff.
Awesome. I just want to thank everybody so much for participating and for coming to this workshop. You helped me get from a 7 to an 8.5.
Wow, very nice. Yeah, like we're using halves now. We're being we're being very precise.
Definitely. Thank you, Kieran.
Thanks, Kieran. Yeah, thanks again. Thanks everyone for coming in and engaging with us. And it makes doing these workshops even more enjoyable. But of course, we also wish you all a very happy holidays, whatever holidays you celebrate. Hope we have a good end to the year and a good start to the new year. I hope this time of year goes well for you all.
A very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year and every happy holidays, and just I hope you have a happy and calm and peaceful holiday season. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah.